Welcome to Up Close and Empowered. I'm Sonna Johns, your host. Thank you so much for joining me. And this is a show all about empowerment. And my hopes are to inspire you to awaken to your true power because you are more powerful than you know. And we are going to talk about empowerment today and spirituality. And I have a very special guest on today that I've been wanting to get on this show for quite some time. In fact, her name popped in my head when I started this series 6 months ago. So I'm so honored and so excited to have her here today. So Rachael Gargan is known for her grounded approach. And this is why I like her and I've been following her for so long because she's able to bridge the gap between spirituality and practicality. Like we are spiritual beings living in a human world. And she is probably the best, I feel, to really explain what this means and how we can apply our gifts and our personal ascension and awakening to life. So, Rachael is a master ascension guide and new earth leader with over a decade of experience guiding tens of thousands of people worldwide. And she helps them through their spiritual awakening and personal transformation. Rachel's belief in the fundamental principle that everything is energy and energy is everything. We hear it over and over, but it's so true. It fuels her passion for empowering others to shift their own energy and elevate the collective consciousness on the planet. Rachael has a diverse range of expertise in various healing modalities, many, but just to name a few, it's level two. She has it including level two Reiki, past life regression, also chakra healing, Akashic record readings, and many others. And maybe she'll talk a little bit more about those today. She combines her expertise along with her intuitive abilities to facilitate transformational experiences with her clients. And this is drawing from her own profound spiritual journey. She has developed her own unique methods designed specifically to guide others towards their inner healing and spiritual growth. She is very passionate. She has amazing energy, and she is on a mission to continue to inspire individuals on their paths of self discovery and spiritual evolution. And it's all about our soul's evolution. So, thank you so much for being here today, Rachael. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here.
Yes, and like I said, I have been a big fan for a long time. I love your content on Instagram. And I'm going to just say it right now. It's Rachel's Butterfly Effect. So follow her and we'll talk about some other ways to get a hold of her at the end of the show. But I love your content. It's always inspiring. It always has great energy and they're quick messages that really keep you on track. So thank you for that. And thank you for all that you're doing for the collective.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, it's such a blessing to be able to have these platforms to share in this way. So it's been
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. That's exactly why I have this platform. And I'm so honored to have you here today. So, Rachel, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are now, like maybe some of your background.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely been a journey. And that's the thing when it comes to a spiritual awakening or a spiritual journey, that it is really a journey of evolution that never really ends. So, even today, I feel like I'm still evolving and shifting and moving into new ways of being. And a lot of people who would know me now and maybe knew me way back when, like, they'd be like, you're a completely different person. So my initial awakening started in 2008. So this is where I would have seen a light being for the first time. So I always grew up and my family, believed in ghosts and things like this. And then I kind of always believed in that stuff. Or I would maybe see something kind of out of the corner of my eye, but could always write it off as something else. And this experience that I had in 2008, it was really the first time that like I could not make an excuse. I could not come up with a reason or I couldn't deny what I experienced. So basically, seeing an actual light being coming to me for the first time, it really like shook my reality. I was very much more like externally focused, that type of thing during that period of time in my life. And it kind of made me pause, I guess, and be like, what is going on? There is so much more going on than what meets the eye. So it kind of spun me into a whole host of things where I started researching about everything spiritual, everything non-physical, learning about spirit guides, chakras. I got my Reiki certifications. I did my yoga certification, breathwork certification, all of that kind of stuff, meditation stuff. So I got certified in a lot of different things, and kind of it was my way of learning everything that there was to learn, and it's kind of learning a new language, a new way of seeing the world. And then around probably about 2014, that's when I got my yoga certification. This was the first time that I started doing more of the inner work. Um, so that is really what kind of yoga means, like, who am I? Right.
Mhm.
So who am I? And I started kind of asking myself that and looking at myself and looking at some of the things that I was doing in my life or symptoms and experiences that I had. So I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of like body dysmorphia as well. I had an eating disorder. This is the first time that I started really admitting to myself that I had these things. Before, I would have been like, "Oh, I'm perfect. There's nothing wrong with me. I've never experienced any trauma. Everything's good." And then in 2014, I was like, "Oh, wow. Like, there's some stuff here that I haven't wanted to look at." So I started really kind of diving into that inner work, and it started like really. I know that eating disorders can be really heavy for people, and
Mhm.
this was like the first layer of the onion. I feel like. I thought I was
Mhm.
going really deep at this point, and it felt really deep and it felt really intense. But as I continued to kind of go inward more and more and more, I started to discover a lot of trauma that I had experienced. So I was sexually abused whenever I was about 27. And
Mm.
this really triggered a lot of memories from my childhood and my childhood sexual abuse. So this obviously was very difficult time. I know people talk about like the dark night of the soul. I feel like I've had many. I feel like
Right.
I don't have just one dark night of the soul. So that would have been a time period where I started to kind of drop any illusions that I had around my life, my family, my experiences, and I suffered PTSD. I did a lot of therapy, a lot of that type of stuff as well. And also started to really reconnect with my emotional body for the first time. So, a lot of the time when you experience, or for me personally, when I experienced my childhood sexual abuse, it kind of fragmented parts of myself. So there was parts of me that never properly really matured, I guess is the best way to say it. And I experienced a lot of like disassociation from my emotional self. So this also was something that I experienced so many times. I've had people treat me bad and I never really felt it, right?
Mm.
I would go hungry, but I didn't really care. I never really felt it, and things like this. So there was really big disconnect with my emotions. Or if you were like, "Rachel, how do you feel about that?" I would be like, I don't know.
So
Like,
numbed. You were just kind of numbed. Was
just
that from the trauma? Like being
uh,
numbed out like that? Being
yeah,
numb?
definitely. Definitely, definitely. So I lived basically the full majority of the first part of my life very numbed out. And
Wow.
of course, that also goes with, like going out and partying and all
Sure.
of this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And, I was a daily marijuana user at the time as well. So that was another form of me, numbing myself out. So whenever I actually stopped using marijuana completely, that also shifted things in really, really big ways. So that was another huge thing because then I started to feel things which I didn't love.
Wow. Yes, because you were clear. You didn't
Yeah.
have anything in your system and you were really becoming clearer and clearer.
Yeah, absolutely. So then I started really to like matching this with a lot of energy work. So it was kind of like a mixture of me reconnecting to my emotions for the first time, but then also doing a lot of the energy shifting, energy clearing, that type of stuff, because I had a lot of energies that I held on to that weren't mine. Um,
Mhm.
And also, I know a lot of people experience that as empaths as well, right? That we can
Mhm.
feel other people's emotions. So that sometimes can also be the reason why we shut down, because we can feel our emotional body get so overwhelmed from feeling everything around us that we kind of will shut down our emotional body.
So
Um,
where did you start? Like, how did you know where to begin when you started coming to this realization that things were becoming clear? You said you did started to do all this work and work on these modalities. Where did you begin? And for somebody that's listening, where would one begin?
Well, this is actually the reason why I started Rachel's Butterfly Effect because I found it very difficult. Like my journey was probably, like 10 to 15 years. And let's be honest, like thousands and thousands of dollars of me being like, I'm going to go here and I get like a little nugget that
Yeah,
helped. And then I go here and I get a little
I
nugget that
know.
helped. And then I go here. And then it was like, I went to so many different places and I tried so many different things and I spent thousands and thousands of dollars to kind of figure out something that made sense to me and actually worked for me. So whenever I started my business, this is the reason why is that I'm like, I want to give somebody a place where they can enter in and go all the way through and get everything they need in one place for like way, way cheaper than I did it. And to actually be able to help people do that. I never really found, that therapy was something that really gave me the tools that I needed. It was great to go and to talk through a lot of the things, but it never gave me the tools to actually implement in my day-to-day life to deal with my PTSD or to reconnect with my emotions or to learn how to have healthy boundaries again and to not people please and all of those different things to listen to my intuition about red flags and stuff like that. That was like a non-existent thing in my life.
Wow.
Mhm.
So when did you discover that? I mean, when did you realize that there was more to than just traditional therapy?
I mean, I always knew there was more than just traditional therapy. I started doing, I've always done therapy here and there kind of
Mhm.
thing. Whenever I was around 27 with the sexual abuse, I really went into more therapy just around that, because I wanted a therapist who kind of could guide me through that experience. But it was like, that was the place I went and kind of like dumped a lot of what had experienced in a really safe place. But then I continued to do the Reiki, the personal development, working with coaches, my own personal chakra healing, all of that type of stuff. And that was where I kind of got more of the tools. So I did that on the side as well while I was doing it. So it wasn't really one and then the other. I always knew that this was supporting me and helping me as I was going through the experience. Mhm.
Wow. So I mean, you have a very vast background, life experience, but all of the modalities that you've learned throughout the years, again,
Mhm.
to bring it to one place where you can help other people.
Yeah.
So you're a mom. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that and how you navigate this journey of what you do while being a mom with two young children.
Yes, too. Yeah. So actually that is a huge part of what shifted things again. Was also when I met my partner, right? So my husband, he was someone who wanted to know everything. So he was really the first person in my life that was like, tell me literally everything about you. I want to know everything. I want to know every little tiny nook and cranny inside of you. So that was a really huge journey for me because I had a lot of resistance to somebody seeing me in that way.
Mm,
Because I had a lot of trauma, a lot of darkness. I had a lot of belief systems that, no one could love me after all of the things that I had experienced. So for me to be able to share that and to still receive love from him was really huge for me. So I
beautiful.
feel like
That's
that was
so beautiful. I
a
love that.
really huge part of my healing journey was like, okay, like I actually am deserving of
Mhm.
love. I'm deserving of a healthy relationship. And then he created a lot of space for me to be able to kind of continue on that healing journey and kind of find my own self-forgiveness as well, which was a huge piece of me kind of forgiving myself for not knowing better, for not always being conscious, for not for maybe how I've dealt with situations because I didn't have anything better. I didn't know better to how to deal with them, right? Um, so that was another huge piece. And then I had my daughter, which then just again shifts everything because you really are now responsible for another little human being. So that was a huge part of our journey together. And then I've had my second daughter in the last year. And she, of course, also shifted everything.
I bet. I mean, I wonder how you manage it all because I know that you are very passionate about what you do, and then you're a mom as well. So, how do you navigate the day? Like, what is a typical day for you, Rachel?
This is such a good question. So actually one thing that I find is that I've really developed my own spiritual practice that works for me. Because I find that a lot of people are like, okay, you're supposed to have a morning practice and you should meditate and you got to journal and you have all these things. And it's like, let's be honest. I'm like, I homeschool my oldest, I have a baby, a husband, a house, like all of the things. I run a business. It's like I don't necessarily always have a
Mhm.
2-hour long morning practice. And I don't think that it's reasonable for everyone to always have that. So I've really developed a lot of like kind of I call them energy hacks in a way. So it's like energy hacks, quick energy shifts, and really holding a level of witnessing myself in every single moment of my day. So who am I being while I'm washing the dishes? Who am I being while I'm folding the laundry? What are the thoughts that I'm saying to myself? What is the stories that are carrying on and just being a witness of myself in every single now moment. And that's more so what my spiritual practice
Hmm.
is. What you also said too, like we are like spiritual beings living a human experience. So I definitely view that I'm like we're humans, right? We're in a human experience right now. The physical is very important and is good for us to have and enjoy our physical life, but how do we also witness ourselves as the spiritual being that we are, right? So we are spiritual,
Hmm.
we're witnessing ourselves having an experience as a human. um yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so important, and I'm glad we're going this direction because it does start with self awareness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel
Right.
like self-awareness is a really, really huge part of my day to day. And also when I'm not self-aware, then I notice I wasn't self-aware for
Right.
the last however long. There's no judgment to it. It's just like, oh wow, you were just operating in like an unconscious state. Interesting. Let's view that. Let's look at what was the pattern, what is the behavior, what is the program that was operating at that moment, and is this something that's serving you or is it something that's not serving you?
Right. And don't
Mhm.
you feel, Rachel, when you get into this mindset of becoming more self aware, becoming more conscious of every moment in your day, that it becomes a default? So it's not even where you have to specifically focus, oh my God, I got to be self aware. It almost becomes a default. Don't you believe? Like after you do the work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like to me now it just like it just is. It's not something I have to like try to do. And also as well, it's like yes, it's a default, but I mean there's still moments where maybe I'm unconscious, right? And I'm
Hmm. Hmm.
not in that witness state. I'm very much in my human like reacting, say, in a situation. And like I hold space for myself to know that that's okay because I am human. But it's like, okay, so let's witness what that actually looks like, maybe after the fact. So
So a lot
yeah,
of self reflection and being
yes,
really
there's
aware. And
yeah.
how do you feel that being in this conscious state and being in this level of self awareness impacts your life and the lives of others?
Oh my goodness, huge, like in such big
I know
ways.
it's a big
I know it's such a
question.
big question because in huge, huge ways. This is also the reason why, right? It's called Rachel's butterfly effect because
Tell
the
us about that. Tell us about that. I did want to ask you that. So let's talk about it right now.
yeah, so Rachel's butterfly effect, right? Like the butterfly effect is the idea that a small change can create ripples of change inside of a very complex system. So one way that they say this, right, is like a butterfly flapping its wings can create a hurricane on the other side of the world. So the idea of this is that even if I'm just making really little shifts in how I am showing up and being in the energies that I'm operating in, I have the ability to make ripples of change within the entire collective, whether they're completely unseen to me or not. Right? Like I might not
Right.
even see the changes that I'm making. I don't know, it doesn't matter, but just knowing that I actually have the power to make change. And this is something
Mhm.
that I find is really important because a lot of us look at all the complexities of the things going on in our society today, and we can feel very disempowered by it, where we're like, how do we fix this? What really can I do as an individual? But actually you can do a lot. And we can't take
Mhm.
responsibility for other people. We can't take responsibility for these huge things, but we can take responsibility for ourselves.
100%. And that's a, a lot of the reason why I wanted you on the show, because I feel like even the show is going to reach a lot of people and that will be a ripple effect, right? And it's about doing the work within ourselves and being a light as much as we can to cause that or to create that ripple effect.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I love how you worded that because it is really about empowering others or to know that they can be empowered and empower the world, basically. And that we can't really change anybody else, but we can change ourselves. And I think people minimize the effect that they have when they're doing this work. Like I don't think they realize how much they're contributing to the world. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So I do find this definitely, right, with a lot of my clients and the people that I work with, that they don't, when they start working with me, they have this very small view, right, of where they're going. And it's very tiny. Where whenever I talk to spirit, when we talk about manifestation and things like this, spirit's very much like, you need to think bigger. Like all of the time, they tell me this. They're like, you need to think bigger than where you are going. We have this available to you and you're asking for this, right? Um
Right.
and I mean, even if you just looked at it in the plain sense of like money, right? If you had, say, $1 million, you could actually hire people into your business. Right? You could actually have somebody who is a teacher for your children. You could, and you're actually impacting and changing these people's lives because you're giving them a place where they're making more income, where they're happier, where they're right? So you're making ripple effects of change out, let alone just what social media has to give us as well, right? You can just whip up a little post and you put it out and it hits, even if it's 1,000 people, 100 people, you could make somebody smile today and who knows where that could go, right?
Right. And sometimes I find that it takes just one thing that they see or that they hear or that you would say that can completely shift their way of thinking. It's almost like that light goes on or that aha moment. And that happens a lot, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is divine timing. It's like divine timing that they would feel that in the moment.
Mhm. Yeah. So, yeah, there's a million ways that I feel like that we don't realize how much power we have. And one thing that I like to do actually sometimes is like if I'm driving through like, a Starbucks park, like, drive through, I'll buy the person behind me their coffee.
Yep.
Right?
That's
And it's
great.
like I don't need a thank you. I don't need anything.
Mhm.
But imagine if somebody did that for you. Like, would that not make your morning? Like maybe you were having a shitty, shitty morning. I don't know if I'm
Exactly. Yeah.
maybe you're having an awful morning, right? And somebody bought you a coffee and it made you smile. Well, maybe you're going to walk in somewhere else and then buy somebody else a coffee. Maybe that person's going to tell their wife that they love them for the first time in a week after a fight. Maybe, and it's like, you don't know how that is going to then ripple out to affect hundreds of people because you made one small action.
Right, and we don't know what type of morning that person was having. They could have been having the worst week. They could have been going through a really difficult time, and just a small act of kindness can make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So remembering that you have the power to actually make change is really, really important.
Oh, it's so true, and I don't know if people really get it to the intensity that, how powerful it really is. Just the acts of kindness and working on ourselves and becoming more clear in our journey and our evolution, it impacts everyone around us and even our families, right? As we heal ourselves and we do the work and we are becoming a clearer channel, we are actually impacting those around us,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
our families too.
Absolutely. So we're even like right now we were speaking in, the physical action, but when we start talking about actual frequency, right? The frequency that you are holding and as your energy becomes clearer and clearer. So this is part of where we if we go back to kind of that witness state consciousness where we're witnessing ourselves, then we might say like, "Oh my like okay, I am really operating in a lot of anger, frustration, overwhelm, anxiety, depression, hate, fear, whatever it is. This is the main frequency that you are emitting out into the world, right? So is
Right.
this frequency serving you and is this frequency serving others? So when we're able to realize what frequency or energy we're operating in, and then we can say, all right, so I've been operating in fear. This is not serving me. This is not serving my family. This is not serving my relationships. This is not serving where I want to be going. So when we start to shift that and we bring in frequencies like love, peace, unity, right? Then we are able to actually emit out a whole new frequency. So when you walk into a room, you start shifting the frequencies of people around you instantly because you become that light in the room. So this again is the same type of ripple effect, but we're working, and talking about energy.
Mm.
So when we begin to actually shift and take responsibility for our frequency and our energy, because we are energetic, multidimensional beings, um,
Yes.
then we can actually begin to change the entire human collective.
I love that. I want to talk a little bit more about that after the break. We're going to take a short break and I want to dive a little bit more into that and the multidimensional beings. I want to talk a little bit more about that, explain to our listeners. And also, I want to touch upon manifestation and what kind of a place we need to be in order to manifest. I'd like to get your thoughts on that. So, we'll be back right after this short break. Welcome back, everybody, to Up Close and Empowered. And I am talking with Rachael Gargan today, Rachel's Butterfly Effect. And we are getting into a really powerful conversation on spirituality, ascension, personal growth, healing, energy, manifestation, all of the above. And before the break, we were talking about multi-dimensional beings. And I want to talk a little bit more about that, Rachel. What is meant by that for our listeners that may not be completely able to like, okay, what is being multidimensional mean?
Yeah. So, this is a great question. And because multidimensional, so we say, right, you're a multidimensional being having a human experience. Well, what this means is that you have different parts that make up your whole beingness, right? So we have our spiritual body, our mental body, our emotional body, our energetic body, our physical bodies, but we also as well have aspects to us like our higher self, our shadow, our inner child. So, all of these different parts of you actually come together to make up the essence, the frequency, the vibration of what makes you what you are. Right. So, when we look at it, it's kind of like you have a multi-dimensional aspects of you that make up what you are. And as we kind of learn to work with each of these multidimensional aspects, then we can start to shift our identity. We can shift how we are being. We can shift the frequencies that we are working with, the behaviors that we have, the way that we think, the way that we feel about certain things. So, yeah, that's basically what multidimensional is.
Where would somebody start, Rachel, if they wanted to really dive into self-discovery? I know this is a big question, but just so that we can give people some kind of context of what they could do. If they are like, okay, I really want to dive into the self-discovery and I want to become more of who I really am at my core, what would be the first thing that you would say to them?
I would begin with the mental body. Actually, so I'm a look because spirit's saying to me right now, they're like, yeah. So the mental body is like one of the main, I don't want to say issues. So they're saying like one of the main things with humans is actually dysfunction in thinking.
Mhm.
Um,
I believe
so
it.
we can kind of clean up our dysfunction in thinking, then it can really begin to shift our realities. So, what actually happens is like frequencies around us get downloaded into our mental body first. And then we kind of grab it and we have these things that we like to call them, whether it's a limiting belief system or we grab a thought and then we're like, oh, I feel this way or I think this, and then we attach a whole story to it to make us, make that thought make sense to us. And it drops into our emotional body. And now we feel a certain way about it.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then it drops into our physical body. And then we start to have physical symptoms, physical behaviors, physical pain within our body. But the whole journey starts with our mental body. So that's the reason why they're bringing in that when we actually can start to clear up the frequencies we are allowing into our system through our mental body, it can shift everything.
Wow. So it's a lot of that self-mastery, like really learning how to change our pathways?
Yes, but I'm like, well, I can go into this if you really want.
I know it's
Uh,
probably a whole other show, but I
it is.
love this talk. It's just I probably gotta stay on track, but maybe if you could just generalize that question.
Yeah, so, like, generally speaking, I'm like, because the way that they're showing it to me is that it's different frequencies. When we can identify a thought and we're saying, "Is this really coming from God source energy, or is
Mhm,
this coming from the underworld? Is this coming from something that doesn't make me feel good?" When we
mhm.
can identify which place it is actually coming from, because this is the only place where spirit can actually enter into your body. And we want to be connecting to, of course, right? God, source, higher consciousness, whatever it is that you want to call it, right? We want to be connecting in with these higher level energies, not lower level energies. If we, and then they're kind of being like, it's not levels, but just for the
Right.
concept of being able to have this conversation. Um, yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind
no,
of,
I'm glad I asked that. I'm glad I asked that because it does make it a little clearer. And really it comes down to self-awareness, right? Like choosing if it's gonna be a thought that isn't in your best your highest good or whatever, that you kind of shift that thought. It's all about the self-awareness, correct?
mhm, yes, definitely. Because, if we have a thought of like one of my thoughts, right, is, oh, I'm so stupid. And I feel this way because, and then I have a whole story that I've
Mhm.
attached to it, right? Well, where is that thought of I'm stupid coming from? Because that's not coming from my guides and from God and from source. And
Right.
it's not elevating me up in the evolution of my soul, right? So when we
Yes.
have these thoughts that come in, we have to be really, really intentional about what we're doing with that thought. When we take the thought and we start to attach a whole story to the thought and we anchor it through our system, then it becomes part of what we then are vibrating out, right? So when we can also take that thought and be like, actually, no, that's not true. I'm very intelligent. I've built this, I've done this, and I'm actually amazing. Right? Instead of
Right.
the other way, and this is where, like, high level communication can come in, right? Is what level of communication do we have with ourselves?
Right. That
Um,
was something I was going to ask you about because I know in one of your posts you were talking about how our words and codes unlock our frequency. So tell us a little bit more about that.
yes, so your words are codes that unlock frequencies in the invisible realm.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm. So, what are the words also that we are saying? Which is the same thing as what are the thoughts that we're saying, right? What is the words that you're saying? So, when you're having a conversation with someone, are you using words and language that is a lower level communication? Because the moment you say something like, I am blocked, guess what? You're now blocked, right?
Right.
Instead of saying, "I'm blocked in receiving money," right? It's right now I'm evolving into and I'm shifting into receiving more prosperity than I could imagine. So you're honoring the fact that, you're moving into it, you're shifting into it. Maybe it's not here quite yet, but there's an evolving into receiving more prosperity in my life versus I'm blocked with money.
Right. Wow. It's so, so important, so powerful. So when people are on this journey, and let's say that they are really tuning into some of the things that you're saying today, and they start to do this work, what I find and what I found from my own personal experience, so I'm going to get a little bit selfish in my questions here, but because I'm so glad to have you on the show. But what are your thoughts on people losing some of their relationships and friends and things like that? Like when we choose to do this work, and I know that you've encountered this with your clients, what are your thoughts around that? Because it can be very isolating, however, very fulfilling and rewarding in many ways and very empowering. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so this is definitely part of it, right? Part of the process of you evolving. And even I can look at my own personal journey because I built a lot of relationships in a certain level of consciousness. And then as I shifted and evolved and started to raise my level of consciousness, I didn't resonate with those relationships anymore. So it's also in a way, it's like those relationships served me at one
Yeah.
time,
Mhm.
but they don't serve me any longer. And I know whenever I shifted out of those relationships, there was a lot of loss and grief, and it was really difficult for me to actually do. Um, but I've also called in new relationships that feel so much more in alignment, that I actually am receiving, right? An equal exchange with these relationships that feel so much more fulfilling than the relationships that I eventually let go of. So the relationships that you're letting go of, we want to honor it, but we also, and like the emotions that come up with it, because it can be difficult to do. But at the same time, we also want to know that it's not always going to feel this way. And as you continue to evolve as well, you are going to have such a better relationship with yourself, that you will
Yeah.
feel so much more evolved in yourself, that it's okay. It's easier for you to be alone. It's easier for
Right.
right? So I do feel this way as well, because I hear this with a lot of my clients, like, Rachel, I don't have any friends in my day-to-day life. I don't really have anybody who like supports or gets what I have to say. And I'm like, want to know what? Neither do I. Right? But
Yeah, but there's a lot of benefits to it too, and we have
yeah.
to think about our own soul's evolution and why we're meant to be here.
Yes. And also, like, but it doesn't bother me the way it would have maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Because 5 or 6 years ago, I was like, I wish that I had my tribe. I feel very lonely.
Mhm.
As I've learned how to be with myself more, it's been easier for me. And also, as well, Spirit's bringing in right now, too, that we go through a period of isolation on purpose. Because they're like, when we go through this journey, you have to have things stripped away so that you can go into a period of isolation, so that you can get to actually know yourself and do the real inner work that is needed to be done. So a lot of people resist this time, like that isolation period, but it's a very temporary period. So when you come out of the isolation period, then you begin to build new relationships that are on like next level, so good for you, right? Like they just feel so nourishing, and it's so equal, and there's so much unconditional love and space and all of this stuff that you maybe can't even imagine right now, right?
Right, so they're more on the same frequency of their growth, like your growths are similar, so you can relate and you attract your tribe.
Yeah. And this is also the reason why social medias have come forward during this period of time in our evolution. So, as we kind of evolve as a collective, we've kind of purposely put light workers or people who are in this spiritual journey in different places, because you are the conduits of light. Right. As you're raising your vibration, you're creating those ripple effects of the butterfly effect, right, within your areas. And in order for us to also not necessarily feel alone in it and to continue to do it, the social media platforms have been created for this time so that we can meet,
Mhm.
the light worker on the other side of the world, the other person, and build our communities in a different way. So that you still have community, you still have support, you still have like minded people, but we might not necessarily physically always be with each other.
I agree. I agree. I mean, there's definitely some benefits to social media, especially if you're resonating with certain people, and it can help you. It's a support system. It's a community.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, for
absolutely.
sure.
Mhm.
So the other thing I want to talk about is working like people that we talk about being spiritual beings in a human world. We all have to pay our bills, life goes on. And, how do we navigate through that? And what about the people that might be focusing more in their masculine energy, like, really like aggressive and go, go, go. And then you've got the people in their feminine energy that they're like, oh, I'm just going to sit back and just trust that everything's going to happen. Because I really want to talk about this for a minute because there is a lot of this in the spiritual community online right now. Well, you just got to trust and allow. And yes, to a certain degree, there it is, but you still need to take some action, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So we really are learning and relearning how to balance our divine feminine, divine masculine. So a lot of the time I feel like the divine masculine's kind of gotten a bad rap. And then people are like, but the feminine is like what we want to be working in. And I really feel like it's actually about balancing these two. So when we talk about the divine masculine, this is very much more like a linear way of thinking,
Mhm.
right? It's more thought thinking, aligned action, this type of thing within the physical. And then when you talk about the divine feminine, this is those like listening to your intuition, trust, surrender, creativity, these types of things. So we want to bring these two into balance. And this is what I see with a lot of, the people that I work with who are spiritual business owners. They're usually in one or the other. And this is the reason why they're not seeing a lot of momentum in their business. So we're either so focused on like, having the perfect funnel and our this and that and
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
so focused on all of the things and getting our perfect logo or whatever it is that they're not allowing any space for spirit to come in and actually create anything. Or you have the people that are so in their feminine that they're kind of like sitting back, being like, well, I'm just going to go to my yoga class and it's just going to magically happen, but they're not really taking consistent aligned action.
So what's
So
the perfect storm? What is the answer in your opinion?
yes. So the answer, I guess, in my opinion, is that we want to always take the divine feminine and filter it through the divine masculine. So the
Mm.
divine feminine is going to be more of like this is where spirit's saying, hey, Rachel, I have a really good idea for you. You need to do this, right? And you feel that
Mhm.
creativity, that excitement, and we filter the divine feminine through the divine masculine and we start creating aligned action on the thing that we were, kind of excited about, that we got downloaded to do. So, what is your intuition telling you? And then what is the aligned action to actually bring it forward in the physical? So the divine masculine is going to be the physical action or the thing that will bring it into the physical. So maybe we have these really big visions. We're like, I'm going to create this really big thing. That's amazing. That's your divine feminine, right? That's giving you this really big vision. But what is kind of how do we filter that vision through the masculine? How do we
Right.
begin to, have those kind of little actions to get there? So yeah, that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, so it's a combination. It's really
Yeah.
kind of they're both working together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, once, sometimes I'm like, "Ooh, I'm a little too much in my masculine," I'll go back,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
sometimes it's like I'm too much in my feminine, I go back. So how can we kind of create this dance between the 2 where you have the vision, you have the aligned action, you go back. What's the next intuitive move that feels good, that feels exciting, where, feels creative, and then we go make action on it. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I want to shift gears for a minute because we're kind of winding down a little bit, but there's a few other really important things I want to ask you. And one of them has to do with manifestation. So I see a lot of your posts on manifestation. And one of my biggest questions that I get, and that I actually want to know your opinion on or your thoughts on it, is does someone need to be doing the work, at least on some level, in order to manifest? In other words, so some people say that you can manifest and you don't have to do the work. You can manifest what you want. And then others will say, well, it's really good to get aligned with your truth and then manifest. What are your thoughts?
Mhm. So well, they're saying that you can manifest in many different ways, right? So, like, even if you were to look at, like, there's lots of people that aren't good people, that have billions of dollars. Right? And then
Yeah.
there's lots of
Yes.
people who are amazing people who've done all the work and they don't have $1 billion. So
Right.
why is it this way? Did that person really do all of the work in order to then be worthy of receiving $1 billion? Not necessarily, right?
Oh my God, that's such a great oh my gosh. Yes. Go on, go on, go on.
So it's not, you don't need to do anything in order to be deserving of receiving. Is what they're saying. You're already deserving of receiving. You already can create and have whatever you want at your fingertips,
But what if
right?
the intentions aren't so pure though, Rachel?
Yes. Of course, the thing is like we work with people, you and me, who have pure intentions. This is part of what the shift on the planet that is happening right now. It's really like the rise of the light leaders, right? Where we're going to begin to take back our power, our remembrance of how powerful we are, our remembrance. We're going to take back, a lot of the systems at play as well as the money at play as well, because the way we will utilize that is going to look so incredibly different than the way it's being utilized right now. So there is a shift that is taking place, and we're really being called as light leaders to step into that. Um, but with that being said as well, it's not like you have it's like you're deserving of it right now is really what they're saying. They're like, part of the thing is that we've been so conditioned, and especially even in the
Mm,
spiritual community, we've been so conditioned that you can't have what you desire because you're not good enough, or because you didn't do
right.
something, or because you don't deserve it, or because you have to do all this WORK, which my guides hate, right? You got to do all of the work before you will be deserving to have it.
Mm,
And they're saying that this is
interesting.
one of like the biggest kind of matrix programs or programs that have been put on us to that kind of stops us from actually being able to receive what we desire to receive. So what also happens as well when we're talking about manifestation, and the reason you're like, okay, so cool. I deserve it now. So like, why isn't it here?
Mhm. I'm
Right?
sure a lot of people are asking that.
Yeah. I could hear though. They're like, okay, so cool. Then like why I would love to have $1 million. Why don't I just have it then? So we want to also work with getting our multidimensional system kind of on board with the thing. So when we realize that we have been conditioned and we have many programs that we've brought and energies that we've brought into our multidimensional system that are still operating there, then we need to become aware of them. So we need to work with our mental body, our emotional body, our physical body, and our spiritual body to bring all of these things into alignment to be able to actually manifest the thing. So if you were
Wow.
to say, "Hey, mind, what do you actually think about what Rachel is saying?" Your mind very well is like, "That's not true. I've been trying to make it happen. It's not working."
Yeah.
Right? So is your
Mhm.
mind really on board with it?
Mhm.
If you were to ask your body, like, "Body, are you on board with having $1 million tomorrow?" Your body might actually contract and be like, "Oh my god, that feels too big. It's too scary and overwhelming." Well, is your body really on board with it? Right.
Right.
So when
Right.
we can start to work with these aspects of ourselves and get them on board, then we can manifest very, very quickly.
Wow, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. That's so interesting. It's so fascinating, right? So, Rachel, what are you working on now? And, what's exciting coming up? Where can people find you? I know you have an awesome YouTube channel and you have the Instagram. Maybe share those handles with our listeners right now so they know where to find you. That'd be the first start.
Yeah, so it's Rachel's Butterfly Effect on Instagram. I have, a TikTok. I also as well have YouTube. So I put different things on kind of different platforms depending on what you're looking for. And then a lot of the work that I'm doing, it's Really, I'm like, I love to be like that one place where you can find whatever it is that you're looking for. Whatever your investment level is, there is a place for you. So I have, lots of free resources for people. I also have a community, for people where they can get energy updates, monthly activations, monthly master classes, that's very, very affordable. And then I do a lot of business mentorships as well for the spiritual business owners. So I have the Ascension Business School, which is a lot of fun. So we meet, we talk about frequency of money, frequency of social media. We do energy, but we also do strategy and we blend the two together. And then I also have my certification program as well, which is to become a certified ascension guide, where we really break down what is ascension. We break down the ascension system, so how you can really guide your clients through an actual system of healing as well. So this is like the system that I've created with ascension and spiritual awakenings. And then, of course, I do like activations for spiritual gifts and all that stuff.
Right, right. I know you do it all. So what is your biggest life lesson? What out of all of what you've learned so far, what stands out the most?
Mm. My biggest life lesson, there's 2 that's coming to mind really, which is that
Okay.
you create your own reality, and also self-responsibility has really been a big one for me. When I started to take responsibility for my energy, my thoughts, and how I was being, my reality shifted in really, really big ways. So, I never really thought I would be a person who had a husband and got married and owned a home and all of these things. So whenever I really started to take responsibility for who I was being, my actions, and then started to really shift that, then I started to really see a whole new reality and possibility open up to me.
Yeah, and don't you feel like when people do the same and they take that responsibility and let's face it, we have to find ways to incorporate these modalities and this inner work into our life. And it's possible, right? I mean, it doesn't mean quit your job and you've got to become a full-time, full-time into ascension or, in your awakening path. I mean, it's something that you can integrate into your everyday life, right?
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I'm really like passionate about sharing. It doesn't have to look a certain way, right?
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to look the way that we've seen it look in the past either, because we're going to be creating a whole new thing. You are just a spiritual being living a human experience, and it gets to look however you want it to look.
Right. You're in control. I mean, you are, I always hesitate to use that word control, but it is kind of taking control of your destiny or creating your life. Creating is probably a better word. And what I feel, and I think that you would agree, is that when we're on this personal growth, personal development, spiritual journey, call it whatever, it's important to have someone to support you, guide you, and someone to be accountable to. I really feel that, I mean, I could have never done it alone. I'm just saying I could have never done it alone. And I am a big advocate for finding someone that can help you in this process because over time you will be able to integrate these things on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for me personally, I would have never been able to do it alone either. I had a lot of help and mentorships and things that I did along the way in order to be able to be, where I am today. And I still get support and help and mentorships as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a journey. I mean, we're always growing, learning, evolving, learning from other teachers, learning from other sources,
Y
right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's also, what we were talking about in the very, very beginning. I'm like, it is an evolving process, you're always evolving.
Yes.
So that's one thing too, is a lot of people are like, "Well, when is my spiritual awakening gonna be done? When is all of the work gonna be done?" And, I'm 15 years in, it's still not done. It's gonna just continue, and that's also like, I love that. I love that I get to
Yes.
be like a scientist of my own life and to continue to discover things about myself as I go and to continue to evolve into better and better and better versions of myself.
Totally. And to me, and just to like wrap up the show, to me, it is so empowering. I mean, that's where we really feel empowered in our self worth and we learn to trust ourselves when we step onto this path. So I am so grateful to have you here today, Rachel. I can't even tell you. This is going to be one of my favorite shows. And I just want to thank everybody for listening. If you want to reach out to me, it's sonnalife.com or at Sonna Life Coach on Instagram. Please reach out to Rachel. She has several different platforms. I highly recommend following her. Her energy is contagious. And like I said, we all need that support and that energy to keep going in this ever-changing world. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rachel, so much for being here today.
This was such a blessing. I really appreciate it. So yeah, thank you so much. I had so much fun.
Me too.
I
Me
love
too.
talking
Thank you,
about this.
everybody. And have a great week. Thanks for listening.